समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले. दिस इज द राइट टाइम.
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले. दिस इज द राइट टाइम.
आप समझा?
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
While his win was widely expected, he was always front runner. It's the scale of the win and the fact that he's thrown a gauntlet straight to Donald Trump that has made politics very interesting, both in the United States of America as well as globally. Trump responded with a very cryptic message and said, "So it begins." Trump also claimed that the bad election night for Republicans was because he himself was not on the ballot. Mamdani is the first Muslim mayor of New York City. He's also the first mayor of Indian origin to be mayor of New York City. Like I said, he is the son of filmmaker Mira Nair and scholar Mahmood Mamdani. Mahmood Mamdani was born in Mumbai and then his life moved to Uganda. So Zohran Mamdani grew up with influences from India, from Uganda, and of course, from America itself, making him the quintessential melting pot candidate for the city that often prides itself for being exactly that. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. On the program today, we'll be looking at the ramifications of this big win by Zohran Mamdani, how Trump has reacted to it, and how many interesting things can be read into Zohran Mamdani's victory speech, not least the fact that he quoted India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, channeling the Independence Day speech made by Nehru, calling it his own tryst with destiny. Zohran Mamdani has also been a critic of Prime Minister Modi, and now he's gone and quoted Nehru. His parents, his mother at least, continues to have an active link to India, making for some very interesting discussions here in India as well. Mamdani also had 4 words for Donald Trump. He addressed the US president directly and warned Trump that the city that gave rise to Trump, because remember, Trump is a New Yorker, would also be or could also be the end of Trump. It was overall a bad night for the Republicans. In Pennsylvania, where the Republicans had hoped to take control of the Supreme Court, it was a 3-state sweep by the Democrats. Is blue back, or is New York really a bubble? The Republic of New York, as they like to say. Either way, Indians will be following the rise and rise of Zohran Mamdani with keen interest. Of course, partly because of his very direct India connections, the son of parents who were born in India. But of course, Mamdani positions himself as a candidate for all of New York. And yet, in his victory speech, the music gave him away. Dhoom Machali was one of the tunes that played as he marked his big win. To talk about how to read Mamdani's win, we're joined now from Washington by Chidanand Rajghatta, author and senior journalist, columnist in the Times of India, and somebody who's been tracking these developments very, very closely. Before I play out that bit where he quotes Nehru, his win was expected. Polls always placed him as the front runner because, it took Hillary Clinton to point out that more people had voted in this election than in 50 years in New York. She did not endorse him before the election. She congratulated him after his win. What's the big message from this win, both for Republicans and Democrats?
That people are unhappy, and particularly, people in American cities. We have to remember when we talk of the Democratic sweep that all this has happened in mostly Democrat-leaning states. New York, New Jersey are typically always Democrat-leaning states, so we shouldn't read too much into it. But definitely going by the turnout and the way the kind of euphoria with which he swept into office, suggests that people are deeply unhappy with day-to-day issues, day-to-day living, or what Mamdani called affordability crisis. And this extends across the United States, particularly in the cities, in urban areas. We don't know whether it affects rural areas too, but whether they'll react to it by voting, a leftist, that we don't know yet. But definitely, this is a message to the rulers, both Democrats and Republicans. Remember, to me, this is a vote against the establishment, even the Democratic establishment, because the mainstream, the centrist Democrats, did not back Mamdani, and he won despite that. You mentioned Hillary Clinton, not only Hillary Clinton, the senators of New York, Schumer, who's an old dinosaur who's been senator from New York forever, did not endorse him. And basically, the centrist moderates in Democratic Party did not endorse him. So it was what Trump calls a radical left, which has seized control, and we now have to wait and see whether they'll be able to push their agenda across the rest of the party, and that depends on how Mamdani delivers in New York. He's made a lot of promises, which will be very, very tough to deliver, and we'll know over the next 4 years how that plays out. But for now, the message we can get from this is that people are deeply unhappy across America, and particularly in American cities. And we always knew Mamdani was going to win, but the way he's powered his way to victory without too much support from his own party suggests that people don't care for centrist Democrats either. They want solutions. They want radical solutions.
I want to play the bit from his victory speech that has everybody in India talking, and that's his invoking of Jawaharlal Nehru. And I'm going to play that out and come right back to how this is playing out in the South Asian community in particular. Mamdani is born to Mira Nair and Mahmood Mamdani. Mira from India, Mahmood born in Mumbai, then moves to Uganda. And the fact is that Mamdani has been a Modi critic, and here he is now quoting Nehru. And I'm just wondering how all of this is playing out in the South Asian community. But let's take a look at this bit where Mamdani seems to quite channel his inner Desi.
Standing before you, I think of the words of Jawaharlal Nehru. A moment comes but rarely in history when we step out from the old to the new, when an age ends and when the soul of a nation long suppressed finds utterance. Tonight we have stepped out from the old into the new. So let us speak now with clarity and conviction that cannot be misunderstood about what this new age will deliver and for whom. This will be an age where New Yorkers expect from their leaders a bold vision of what we will achieve, rather than a list of excuses for what we are too timid to attempt.
Were you surprised to hear him quote Nehru?
Yes and no. I mean, there have been a lot of Indian elements to his campaign. Like you mentioned, the rally ended with "Doom Machale," which I suspect Trump would have heard it as a "Doom Machale." But there were a lot of other elements. Even his campaign, his digital campaign, used a lot of Bollywood song and dance. There was one ad I remember where he used the dialogues from the movie Diwar. Anybody who's familiar with Diwar back in the 70s? There's this line about "Mere paas gaadi hai, bangla hai, ye hai, wo hai, tumhare paas kya hai?"
Mere paas maa hai.
But in this case, it was mere paas voters hai. And so I was not surprised by his use of invocation of India, but the specific Nehru thing, I don't know whether it was pointed because he is a critic of Prime Minister Modi. You mentioned the South Asian Indian diaspora and how they would react. But look, the Indian diaspora is, particularly in New York, it's very mixed. There are people who are liberal, left of center. There are people who are right. There were a lot of people who criticized Mamdani, who did not vote for Mamdani, who are, for lack of a better word, supporters of Prime Minister Modi. But there's also, people opposed to Prime Minister Modi who voted for him. the important thing is he really pulled all the immigrants together. And the New York City electorate, I think 40% of New York City voters are born outside the United States or foreign born. And he actually, in his speech, he mentioned, Latinos, Guyanese, Jamaicans, Senegalese. New York, you've lived in New York, and it's a very, very, very mixed city.
Yeah.
And so he really pulled immigrants together. And the other big takeaway from this victory is that at a particularly fraught moment in the United States, was a lot of anxiety among immigrants. He provided a reassurance that, look, in fact, this morning, I think he said, if Trump wants to get to me, he has to get to all of us. And literally rallying immigrants and telling them that, you belong here too. And so it was a very powerful moment. I mean, I don't particularly place too much emphasis on his, anti-Modi or whatever. The fact is he pulled immigrants together. And this was a sort of vote of confidence in America, and particularly New York City as a city of immigrants.
Since you've mentioned Trump, let me actually play out what he said in his direct message to Trump, and I'll come right back to talk about how this might shape or reshape America. Let's take a...
So, Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up. We will hold bad landlords to account, because the Donald Trumps of our city have grown far too comfortable taking advantage of their tenants.
Both heard that statement to Trump, right, where he says, "Turn the volume up."
Right.
How did you read that comment? Because the very interesting thing is that a lot of people, even in our audience stream, is saying, "Why are you hyping up a mayor's election so much?" One, this is the mayor of New York City. Two, he is posing a direct challenge to Trump, and Trump has also been reacting to him. So, how did you see the fact that Mamdani directly addressed Trump?
Well, obviously, he leads. First, let me address why New York mayor election is important. It is the most important city in the world, or the wealthiest city in the world.
Yeah.
The budget of New York City is larger than the budget of Maharashtra, which is the richest Indian state. Okay, New York City is $112 billion. Maharashtra is $83 billion. So it is sort of the ground zero of capitalism. And in the ground zero of capitalism, you have a socialist, a self-declared socialist mayor. I mean, that is truly a phenomenal change, right? And it tells you that, New York City is not all about Wall Street and Fifth Avenue. There are parts of New York City, you've lived there, which are really poor. The Bronx, the Brooklyn, the parts of Queens, in areas of Bronx, the poverty level is, about 40%, right? And so this is actually a direct challenge, like I said, not just to the Republican Party, but to centrist Democrats, that your solutions are not working. So he's literally positioning himself. The one thing is, of course, we have to understand that Zohran Mamdani cannot run for president, because he was not born in the US. He was born in...
I think that's a very important point, because a lot of people are already thinking that in this Zohran versus Trump, Zohran is now eyeing a run for president. It's important to note that Zohran, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Chidanand, became an American citizen in 2018.
A little earlier, I think, but
okay, but a few years ago.
Yeah, but and he was not born in the United States. That's established. So he cannot run for president. Yeah. But he definitely can push the party further left, which is what he's trying to do. Also, remember, one of the most influential, lawmakers, Congress representatives is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's just 2 years older than him, also from New York, born in the US, and she can run, right?
Yeah.
And these are essentially Bernie's children. This is, good old Bernie Sanders, pushing, past 80, who actually has literally fostered them politically. And they reflect many of his views and his idealism. And Bernie came pretty close to getting the Democratic nomination, if you remember. And so these are his surrogates, his protégés. And so, yeah, definitely there is an attempt to shift the Democratic Party further to the left. And the New York vote is an expression of that. And the fact is, New York's very diverse electorate, largely foreign born, have spoken loudly that they are not only against the Republican Party, but also against the moderate Democratic Party. Whether this Sorry, go ahead.
No, I want to come to whether they can actually succeed in shifting the party leftwards, or whether this is in fact a bubble that is confined to New York. But I wanted to read a comment from one of our regular viewers, Prasad. He says Zohran ran a campaign which is the Yankee equivalent of Kejriwal. His tall promises are difficult to implement, but the causes he ran on are real: affordability and opportunity. Do you see the parallel? I mean, certainly he had 1% of the vote, and today he's making sort of history, as we already said, more people turning out to vote, more people showing enthusiasm than they have in 50 years for this election. Do you see today's Kejriwal is not a parallel at all, but do you see a parallel with the Kejriwal who first emerged on the political scene? I mean, people are going to do this now. They're going to find these analogies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you and I have been through too many of these things to be taken in by it. Although I still, feel, the surge of idealism. It's not just Kejriwal. Look back, Rajiv Gandhi or Barack Obama, when they first come, they're full of, ideals and promises and this thing, and the system just beats them down. So, yeah, I mean, he's 34, he has a winning smile, he's personable, he has all the right words, he's fluent, but delivery is a different deal altogether. I mean, New York City is hard to down. Like I said, it has a massive, it has the largest municipal budget in the world, I think, 112 billion. And as I recall, about half the budget, half of its budget comes from taxes where Mamdani, the mayor, has control over, right? Property tax, corporate tax, personal income tax, sales tax. This is 50% of the revenue. Another 25% of the revenue of the state depends on federal aid and state aid, which means Washington, D.C. and Albany, which is the capital of New York State, where Democrats are in control, but they are moderate Democrats. They don't want to push the city or the state too far left. So 25%, he's dependent on federal and state aid. Another 25% comes from fines and traffic and tickets and stuff like that. And anybody who's had a ticket in New York knows how it is. A couple of months ago, I literally slit my wrist and let them take $333 for a ticket in New York. So it's going to get brutal. But yeah, no, look, the thing is, it's how he sort of raises money, and whether, Trump will sort of control at least 10 to 15% of, the budget, whether he's in a mood, and Trump has already indicated that he's not going to give any money for any kind of welfare.
Yeah.
So that means he'll have to raise, personal income tax, corporate tax on the billionaires. And New York, by the way, has the highest number of millionaires in the world, 350,000, 3.5 lakh New Yorkers are millionaires. And already you hear reports of many of them fleeing. Actually,
are they actually going to do that, or was that because I saw Bill Ackman, for example.
Right. Yeah.
Bill Ackman, such a big critic of Mamdani, such a supporter of Trump, after the big win, saying, "Hey, Zohran, can I help you? Can I help the city of New York in any way?"
Yeah. So they'll have to find a way to coexist. But look, the fact is, if the taxes are too brutal, many of them will flee to Connecticut, just an hour up from Manhattan. I believe already realtors in Greenwich, Connecticut are rubbing their hands because, the billionaires are coming. Some of them are going to Florida. Most notably, one has already decamped several years ago, the president. So yeah, he'll have to navigate this very carefully. It's one thing, campaign promises, I'll give you this, I'll give you that. We've seen this, for years over in many countries, many cities. If you overpromise and you can't deliver, the payback will be brutal. It'll all end very quickly. But yeah, for now, it'll be the honeymoon phase. But the interesting thing is how this will affect other cities in the U.S. One of the big lessons, actually, and this has been happening for a while, I've pointed this out before, that there is a definite urban-rural divide in the United States, and it's getting stronger all the time. So, by the way, along with the mayoral election in New York, there's mayoral elections in a bunch of other places, Minneapolis, Cincinnati, and all of them Democrats won. So cities of America are blue and turning bluer in many cases, and there is then the vast, middle America, which is all red, Republican. And this divide is actually, quite striking. There are also smaller cities in many Republican states which are sort of blue. Say Austin or Asheville in North Carolina, they're all Democratic. So there's this definite divide. And a lot of people will be watching how Zohran Mamdani delivers. I mean, he's 34. His resume is very thin. He has very little experience in governance. I mean, Bill Ackman's outreach is an encouraging sign. But it also means that there will be a negotiating process. The billionaires will talk to him before they decamp. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting few years in New York. I just get the sense that he'll have to temper many expectations to deliver, because he needs revenues, and particularly if Trump cuts off revenues, and if his own party, which rules the state, is not too enthusiastic, they could drag him back. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be there's basically creative tension in America between the socialists, the so-called socialists, and, well, they're not so-called. He is a socialist. He's a self-confessed socialist. But the centrists and the right and Republicans will also have to reconcile. This demonization of socialism didn't have an effect in New York City in this election. They tried their best. I mean, Trump kept on calling him communist. He's not even a socialist. He's a communist. He's a communist. But you know what? America had a very thriving socialist movement. People forget that. Communism was not always bad. There was a Communist Party of America. There was a Socialist Party of America, right? And in fact, just for background, like a complete aside, the founder of the Communist Party of India actually studied in Stanford. Okay,
Really?
If you look at the communist history, he actually founded, the Communist Party of Mexico before founding the Communist Party of India, right? So communism was, thriving. Socialism was thriving. There are a lot of socialist elements in the United States. Remember, this country was rescued from the Depression by socialist policies, which survive to this day. I mean, what is Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security but socialist policies?
Yeah.
And you have a president who's now taking stake in Intel, in US Steel, right? So socialism suits these guys fine, when it's needed to rescue the people.
Yeah. I want to ask you what you think this win does to the sort of anti-India sentiment in particular that has been very visible in Trump's own base. Now, as you know, but since you've mentioned the fact that I've spent time in New York, I grew up in New York in the 70s. And that New York, my mother, who wore a sari and a bindi to walk us to school in Kew Gardens, PS 99, my sister and I, in that New York, we still had white kids chasing us, making fun of my mother's bindi. I then returned as a graduate student at Columbia, and New York has transformed and it has become the melting pot that it has. And there's no question. I mean, I used to wear a chudidar kurta to my school in journalism school in Columbia, and nobody would even think to comment on it. And as you said, New York is this, New York isn't just Fifth Avenue and Saks. New York is everything from, I don't know, Rockaway Park to the Bronx, and then Midtown Manhattan. And, all of the five boroughs have a different sort of character. My question is, the city we identify as a melting pot may be just that, the city. Outside of the city, outside of the coasts, there is America that has been shifting under Trump. Will Mamdani's win make a bigger statement about inclusion? Because after all, he is of Indian origin. He's Muslim. He said today, I'm young, I'm Muslim, I'm socialist, and I won't apologize. Or will there be fears of a backlash in other parts of the country? He's a polarizing figure. He's an unapologetic figure. He's a recent American citizen. It's going to trigger wide open the immigration debate again. So how do you see, this impact in other parts of America?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, there is a very distinct divide between urban America and, hinterland or middle America. Urban America has turned blue. Cities of America are more and more sort of diverse and, mixed. And you see this in the election results, right? The Democrats represent a broader coalition of diversity, including immigrants. You saw that, for instance, one of the other mayoral elections, by the way, was Cincinnati, right? So Ohio, Trump territory, rural Ohio, all red. But Cincinnati, by the way, the winner in Cincinnati was an Indian origin guy, Aftab.
Yeah.
And he defeated J.D. Vance's half-brother.
Correct.
By a huge margin, right? So these are cities which, the election results reflect the diversity, and they typically go for Democrats who reflect a very plural sort of base. So if Republicans want to win cities or want to make inroads into cities, they have to drop this whole demonization of immigrants and immigration and so on. And at the same time, if Democrats want to, make inroads into rural America, they also have, they can't go overboard with the kind of, immigration policy they had. I mean, there has to be via media. So like I said, this is a creative tension in not just, economics and what is the future of America, but also, what America should look like. I've always said, look, there is no country on the planet which takes in 1 million legal immigrants every year. Okay. And on top of that, you have 1 million plus illegal, this thing, which now has stopped. Right. So the open borders didn't work. There was a backlash. So the immigration has to be tempered. There's no doubt about it. I mean, there's no country which can afford to have open borders and tell everyone, come on.
I was just going to say that even Biden had to walk back his politics on immigration after states like Texas started saying that, okay, you know what, you want the immigrants, we'll send them to you in busloads, you look after them. I want to talk a little bit before we end on the sort of American big picture and how Trump might react. Zohran Mamdani's wife has attracted a lot of media attention. His parents, of course, have been more closely tracked by us here in India because of their Indian links. But, he is married to somebody of Syrian origin, Rama Duaji, who has played a key role in his campaign and is now, they're like the sort of first couple of New York, now vastly under microscopic scrutiny. What has been her role in this campaign?
I think the family has played a very important role. She was very low-key. And for that matter, I think Mira Nair also played a very important role. I don't know if people in India saw his digital campaign. It was simply brilliant. It was simply brilliant. The way he cut, his videos. And in fact, Trump seems old-fashioned with his embrace of just Twitter. This guy went on TikTok and all this new, the younger demographic.
And you think that's Mira, the filmmaker mother?
I definitely think so. I mean, listen, the Bollywood elements, the lines from Diwar or, Doom Machale, all these things, definitely I see her sort of, fingerprints. But yeah, look, the scrutiny is going to be, great. But remember, this is New York, okay? And this is America. Look, at the end of the day, no matter how much we criticize, this country elected Barack Hussein Obama, as Trump likes to say, okay? Yeah. About 8 years after 9/11. 8 years after 9/11, right? And the city which suffered 9/11 has now elected a Muslim mayor. Is this a great country or what? Is this a great city or what? So, I mean, I'm very optimistic about both New York and America itself. I think it's going through a phase. It'll go through this very toxic phase. It'll eventually leach out. But the fact is, New York has embraced Zohran Mamdani and Rama Duaji, and so have many other cities. And eventually, people will realize there is simply no argument that immigrants enrich this country, and Indian immigrants particularly so. In fact, there are a lot of Indian immigrants actually who have won in this election. The Lieutenant Governor of Virginia,
Ghazala Hashmi, is that her name? Ghazala Hashmi,
born in Hyderabad. Aftab Purawala I mentioned, and I've seen this happen over a period of 10, 20 years now. Every time I got, and the interesting thing is none of them inherit political power. They all come up grassroots. They run for city council, school board, county supervisor, which is also Mamdani's story. He was a state assemblyman, and suddenly now he's in the national limelight. So these are positive signs. I think more and more immigrants or people should run for office. They may not make it to the president, like I said. Mamdani will not run for White House. He can't. But definitely they have to be, to ensure their future in this country, they have to, be part of the political system.
And also what's very interesting is we see these images play out. Mira is in her, a trademark, very Indian clothes, her bindi. I mean, she has never actually dialed down her Indian roots. She spends a lot of time actually living in Delhi with her husband. So it's going to be very interesting also to see how all of this plays out because of his criticism of the Modi government, but parents who have such strong, active, visible roots in India. I want to end by talking a little bit about Trump. Bad night for the Republicans. Pennsylvania, 3 seats gone. J.D. Vance's half-brother loses, as you pointed out. Trump has two comments. One, and so it begins. We don't know if we can take the banner off. Yeah, we don't know what it means. And then there's another one that talks about how he's third personing himself, as he often does. Trump wasn't on the ballot and shut down, that's the government shutdown, were the 2 reasons the Republicans lost the elections tonight, according to pollsters. He doesn't say which pollsters. Now, I mean, again, this is vintage Trump. Does Mamdani suit the Republicans? Does it suit Trump? Or ought they to be very worried tonight, especially with what's happened in Pennsylvania, not just what's happened in New York?
Well, the one thing to remember is these victories, most of last night's victories have come in Democratic state, in blue states, right? Like I mentioned, New York and New Jersey, blue states. In New Jersey, there was a brief moment when, a candidate Trump pushed for governor, closed the gap, with the Democratic candidate, but eventually he lost. So these are blue states. The more interesting state is Virginia, which, abuts Washington, D.C., at least northern Virginia. Where Democrats won, and Virginia is a purple state. It's a swing state. It has gone back and forth. But you had a woman, Abigail, Spamberger, was actually a former CIA agent and later became a congresswoman who became the first female governor in the history of Virginia. I mean, I think after 70 male governors, That is interesting because this is a state which abuts Washington, D.C., so you can assume that things that are happening in Washington, D.C. have a spillover effect there. And also Ghazala Hashmi, one as lieutenant governor. So there are 2 women in the state, in a purple state. The other also interesting thing to notice is that of the 2 female governors, the New Jersey also has a female Democratic governor. Both are white women, and both have strong national security credentials. And in Trump's book, white women national security credential is Republican. No, they're both Democrats, right? Yeah. Abigail Spielberger was former CIA agent, and the governor who won New Jersey served in the U.S. Marines, U.S. Navy. So yeah, it's very interesting that the whole idea that somehow if you're white and blonde you are Republican. No, not true, right? And these two results show that. So the Democrats have really a broader coalition that's very obvious. I can understand New York, majority sort of 40% foreign born immigrants, and therefore Mamdani was powered. But Virginia, very, very, very interesting. So yeah, but then again, like I said, I won't. No need to overread this. The fact is, this all happened in mostly blue states, or at best Virginia purple state. California was another interesting result. That has sort of broader implications. There was a Proposition 50. I don't know if go into details, but essentially California, Texas increased its congressional representation of Republican leaning state by 5, so that they could maintain, Republicans could win the House of Representatives. And California has countered by increasing the Democratic leaning sort of segments by 5, neutralizing this. So if this, goes on, if this battle goes on, then we are seeing a country which is sort of deeply...
Well, deeply polarized, but Vivek Ramaswamy was more worried than you. He said that they got their asses handed to them. I mean, I'm just quoting him. So, there is some sense of, I don't know, anxiety.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The fear is that if this spreads, and remember, all this is happening at a time of government shutdown. There is an incredible battle going on. And I can tell you that no matter what they say about the stock market, I mean, this man keeps talking about, grocery prices are going down, eggs prices are going down, gas is going down. No, not going down. A lot of places, it keeps talking of $2 gas. There is no place in the US where gas is $2 a gallon, right? Yeah. And you can feel the unrest. It's not just New York, it's everywhere else. Yeah, the stock market is going up for entirely different reasons, but not all Americans are invested in the stock market. So there is a sense of disquiet, and this government shutdown and the battle over SNAP benefits, which are basically food stamps. Okay, 42 million people, survive on that. And contrary to the impression that the Republicans give that it's only, black people who are on food stamps. No, 42% of food stamp recipients are actually white people. And many of them in red Republican states, right? So this is deeply upsetting. So if this isn't resolved soon, the government shutdown, the restoration of food stamp or SNAP benefits, it is going to hurt Trump. And I think somebody remarked, I forget who, that the 2026 election, which is the midterm election for the entire House of Representatives, which happens in November 2026, has already begun.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we let you go, just to give our audience a flavor of the Bollywood moments at the victory speech, the choice of music, the Dhoom Machale reference that we spoke of. Let's take a look at that, and then we'll come back to you for a final comment. I have to say, I got quite a chuckle. It is so New York,
Yeah.
right? It is like Zohran Mamdani, married to Syrian American, son of Indian filmmaker, who is married to Ugandan-Indian, who is
Right.
now American.
Yeah.
It is so utterly New York.
Absolutely. You know, I think back in the about 15 or 20 years ago, there were a bunch of Bollywood movies which are all shot in New York. I remember Karan Johar, I think it was
Yeah.
Kal Ho Na Ho or something like that. And actually, in one of those movies, I remember the heroine, I think Preeti Zinta or someone saying, every sixth person or fourth person in New York is a Desi.
Yeah.
You know, something like that. That was the line. I mean, a little exaggerated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's quintessential New York, and New York itself is full of ishq. But I tell you, there is no ishq between Republicans and Democrats on this. There is simply no ishq, and if Zohran Mamdani doesn't deliver, okay, Trump will be singing "Doom Machale." You know, this is not Doom Machale. It'll be all doom. He's made some really immense promises, and people will hold him to that, and he needs a lot of help, a lot of luck from help from the billionaires of New York to his own party, which controls the state, to the federal government. And Trump has very clearly said, I'm going to make his life miserable. So yeah, we have interesting times. I hope there is a lot of ishq, but I'm not holding my breath.
Well, in the meantime, I'm definitely stealing your line with copyright credit. Trump will be singing Doom Machale or Dhoom Machale if Mamdani doesn't deliver. Chidanand, Rajghatta, always a pleasure to listen to you, to learn from you, and to enjoy your humorous but incisive take at politics. Thank you so much. Take care and see you soon.
Thank you. Great meeting you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.